Hello and welcome. In this session, we are going to learn something which is a basic part in PostgreSQL, that is setting up the kernel parameters for PostgreSQL when it is deployed on a Linux-based system. In our case, we are going to do everything on on a let me okay so everything what we are going to do is everything will be there on a Linux system, and we are going to see what are the basic kernel parameters that we need to check or set to ensure that Postgre keeps on running properly. So the discussion topic is how do we manage the kernel parameters for PostgreSQL. So this is a very basic thing. Whenever you install a database on a Linux-based operating system, then you say that if the parameters of the kernels which are required for properly running, if it is not properly set, then you may run into problems. Talking specifically about the PostgreSQL, you may run into problem if you have the multiple instances of PostgreSQL which is running on the host, or there may be a case if your database size, I think this spelling is wrong. In case your database size is very huge, in that case there may be an issue with the kernel parameters. The default one may not be sufficient and you may have to adjust some of the parameters. I'm talking particularly in case when you have very large database application connecting through the n number of connections. You are not using any kind of connection pooling like PG bouncer. So that's the basic kind of scenario. So before we go and discuss what are the different kernel parameters and their usage, we will see a few things which are important. So we are going to see the details about shared memory and semaphores. So buffer, it is very important component of PostgreSQL like any other relational database. So there are two terms which we will be talking over here is SHM max. So this says the maximum size of shared memory segment. By default, this is at least 1 KB, but on your system, this will be always higher than 1 KB. So uh, I think where is my, okay, yeah, it is back. So I have a Linux system which is running over here. It is EC2 instance, so it doesn't make much of sense when we check the details over here. But let's talk about the SHM max. So this is maximum size of the shared memory which will be available for your Postgre. I'm assuming either there are multiple copies of Postgre or the database size is too huge. And the another component which you need to understand is SHM all. This is total amount of shared memory available. So these two are normally same, but when you see the value of SHM all will be different because it is divided by the page size in our case as well. Then you have an important parameter which is called as Shm Min. This is the minimum size of shared memory segment. So in any case, this is the least value, which is 1. So that's more than sufficient for the minimum value, because that's the minimum which can be available. There are two more parameters which are SHM MNI, which says the maximum number of semaphore identifiers. And there is another value which is called as maximum number of semaphores, which is on the system wide. So these are the five parameters, kernel parameters, which you need to check when you have the Postgre running. So this is SHM max and SHM all, which are related to shared buffers, and SEM MNI and SEM and MNS. So these are the five parameters. Why number 5 and number 6 parameter, they are very important, because they have a dependency on some of the PostgreSQL components, which is max connection, the number of connections which is allowed to the PostgreSQL, the auto vacuum maximum number of workers which will do the auto vacuuming in Postgre, Then max wall sender, so this is the sender parameter for the wall files. Then you have the max worker processes, and these parameters are very important. The moment you increase this, it has the dependency on these as well. So when you increase this, you ensure that these parameters are also taken care, because they are interdependent. So you need to check these 6 parameters, 1 2 3 4 5, and make sure that according to your RAM, these parameters, and according to the parameters which are set in PostgreSQL, they are set. So we'll have a dedicated session on this shared buffer, so we'll see in that. So what about the default shared memory? So if you are having a system with only one instance, and if it is just the basic kind of system, then you will say the default shared memory is more than enough. In case you have to change your settings, because let's say I have 24 GB of RAM available on my system, and I wanted to allocate let's say 16 GB to my operating system, so that they will be given back to the shared buffer. In that case, we will say set the SHM max and SHM all to these values. So you can, the moment you change the 16 GB to other value, you make the approval. So this is 16 GB and this is 16 GB divided by 2048, and we will see how it is taken care. So this is divided by the huge page size. And if you have, once you have changed it, you need to either reboot your system, or you need to recycle the sysctl.conf file. So sometimes the for permanent settings, you need to reboot your server. So resource limit, this is another important parameter which you need to take care. If you have multiple instances running, then you sometimes you get the you might get the error that maximum number of open files exceeded for this particular user. And in our case, this is Postgre operating system user for Linux based system. In that case, you will see this kind of error. In that case, you need to adjust the parameters, so that by default the parameters which are available, they are more than sufficient. But sometimes sometimes it may be you may be in a situation wherein you need to change it. So there is a limit for the entire kernel, and for each users also you will have to check it properly. So you can check for the maximum number of open files in this, or they can be changed in your sysctl.conf. Before we go down with the Linux memory overcommit, let me show you what is there. If you simply say sysctl-a, this will show you sysctl-a. Okay, I need to come out of Postgre as EC2 user. And if I say sysctl-a grep, what is the amount of SHM max which is present in my system, which is running an EC2, this is huge. This is huge. I haven't calculated it, but this is huge, because it is an EC2 instance, so they would have given set it according to the best maximum possible value, but you always have the capability to change it, so you can change it according to your requirement. And you can check the other parameters, whatever you wanted to check, and if there are any changes required, you can change it. And that's what I was talking about. SHM max and SHM all, they are same value, but sometimes they may be represented in terms of SHM max divided by the page size. So just don't be confused if sometimes you see it as a different value. It is the way they are stored. And there is an important thing which you might see, and sometimes it happens also, like you will see out of memory, and this is very common on in Linux based system, where in operating system memory is exhausted, and your PostgreSQL process may get terminated due to this. So whatever processes are running, incoming connections were already available, they will continue to work, but it is not going to allow you the new connections because there is no memory available to cater those requests. So what you can do is there is swap space which you can increase at your operating system in case you feel that you have some shortage of RAM on your operating system. Then increasing this can sometimes help you to come out of this, and it is always a good practice to have the enough virtual memory available or swap enabled on your system, just in case your physical memory is exhausted, then it is going to be used from your swap. So what is the spatial consideration if you are seeing the over usage of, and this is going to be very important. We need to check if there are too much usage of memory. Then in that case you need to check the PostgreSQL.conf for some of the parameters which directly take the value from your RAM. So it is shared buffer, your work memory, hash memory multiplier. If you see they are not that much used, then you try to lower down their value just to avoid the issue which is coming out of memory, right? And the one of the problem with the Postgre is the maximum number of connections, because at the back end it is going to spin up one more process, and it is going to exhaust the memory on your system. If you see this kind of scenario is available in your environment, then you might test out the connection pooling, and you might try out some of the connection pooling software as well, like PG Bouncer. In that case, you will be able to manage the connection pooling, and you may adjust the value of the overcommit as well, which is more than sufficient in most of the cases. So this is something which occurs very frequently. So it is not just the operating system, RAM, swap. It is your PostgreSQL.conf parameters as well that you need to take care. What is the value you have assigned, and whether they are overused? They are oversized, and in that case you need to trim it off. Linux huge pages. So this is a great parameter if it is being used. In that case, what you have to do is you can start your Postgres without the Linux huge page. So we'll do a separate session on that. So let's see what is the current huge page. Let me switch to the Postgre user. And you simply say head minus $L $pg data Postgre master post.pid. Then it will show you the parameter, and then using this parameter you can calculate what is the requirement of let me paste it over here. Yes, this will show you what is your Linux use page requirement, and you can adjust it accordingly. So let me check out. This is the default huge page which is there. And if in case you wanted to change according to your requirement, you should be able to do it. So you have the formula available, and you can use it accordingly. So this is the formula which is available. In case you wanted to change it, you can change it according to your requirement. And we have already checked what is the current value set on our system. So what happens by default, if it is available, then it is going to use it, and when in case if it is not available, then it will go fall back to the non-available value of your huge pages. So this is going to be important, and just test it out if it works well for you. So just a recap of what are the important kernel parameters. So you should keep a check on SHM max, SHM all, SEM MNI, and SEM MNS. The formulas are also given, and you need to make sure that uh, you understand the different PostgreSQL parameters, because your kernel parameters are at the system level, and your PostgreSQL parameters, they are interrelated, and you have to make sure they are properly set. In case you wanted to change you wanted to assign a specific amount of memory for your kernel parameters, you set it accordingly, because your PostgreSQL shared buffer is going to pick the value from here. Resource limit, you have to specify it if it is you have too many Postgre system running, and in case you are facing some issues which is related to the maximum limit of maximum number of open files or something like that, then in that case you may need to sometimes, most of the times, not sometimes, most of the times, the default values are more than sufficient. Then you have Linux memory overcommit. This is a very what do you say, the regular kind of behavior in PostgreSQL, and in that case what you need to check out, what are the different memory based parameter in your PostgreSQL. If they are oversized, then you have to change it accordingly. Otherwise, you need to make sure that physical RAM and the swap, they are properly configured according to the best practices or not. And this is a very general problem. Maximum number of connections in your PostgreSQL. If it is too much, then try to bring it down, and make sure, if you are not using the connection pooling like PG bouncer, in that case you may try to use it, and you may find it very useful. Linux huge pages, if it is enabled, that gives you the best performance in your Postgre, and just try and see what is the value which is required based on the formula which is given, and you can set it accordingly. I hope this